We are in the heart of Mark's gospel. And in this part of Mark's gospel, 3 times, Jesus tells his disciples and us that he must go to Jerusalem and die. 3 times. The scholars call those the 3 passion predictions in Mark's gospel. 3 times. 3 times he tells them, 3 times they don't get it. Do we? The text before us is the second of those times. The first part of this is almost the same as the first part of the first passion prediction, and then it shifts. They went on from there and passed through Galilee. And he would not have anyone know it, for he was teaching his disciples, saying, and here's the second prediction, the Son of Man will be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him, and when he is killed, after 3 days he will rise. But they did not understand the saying and were afraid to ask him. Maybe they were afraid to ask him because they'd have to do it. And they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you discussing on the way?" But they were silent, for on the way they had discussed with one another who was the greatest. And he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "If anyone would be first, they must be the last of all and the servant of all." And then he took a child and put him in the midst of them, and taking him in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me." The Gospel of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Please be seated. Would you join me in a word of prayer? Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. The theme is discipleship. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem to die, to lay down his life for the sake of the world. When you think of the word disciple, what do you think of? Or to put it another way, if Jesus was standing here and he put before us a model of someone who was the perfect disciple, who would he choose? Mother Teresa? She gave her life for the people in Calcutta. Pope Francis? He's shaken up the Catholic Church, and I think for the better. Elizabeth Eaton? She's the presiding bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Ladies and gentlemen, she is a breath of fresh air. A nurse caring for AIDS patients. A politician working for social justice. A teacher caring for the disenfranchised in the inner city. Who would he choose? Who would you choose? Think about it for a minute. Of all of the people in your life that you know or know about, if you had to pick one of them that would be for you the model of what it meant to be a disciple, who would you choose? You know who Jesus chose? A child. Not Abraham, not Moses, not David, not Mary, not the Good Samaritan, a child. We know absolutely nothing about him. Don't know his name, his family, his age, nothing. The only thing we know is that he's a child, and in that culture, he has absolutely no redeeming qualities at all. No power, no rights, no intrinsic value. And of all the people that Jesus could have picked to be the ideal disciple, Jesus picks a child. You want to know what it is to be a disciple? Here. And then he said, "Whoever receives this child receives me. And more than that, the one who sent me. Do I have to remind anybody in the room that before God lifted up a child, he became one? And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and what? Laid him in a manger. Ladies and gentlemen, the God that we worship so identifies with the little ones, the insignificant ones, the vulnerable ones, that he became one of them. How better to understand the plight of the least of these than to become one? I think that's why Mother Teresa gave up her life to the disenfranchised in Calcutta, India, because in doing so, she came face to face with God himself. Jesus said it best. As you do it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you what? You do it to me. Do you want to see God? Do you really want to encounter Jesus Christ? Then go to the Brumby School and have lunch with a third grader. Go to Yells and participate in an after-school program for an at-risk teenager. Go on over to Must and feed a lunch or a dinner for a homeless person. Go to Lutheran Services of Georgia and help some refugee child build his life back together. We had a wonderful experience last week. Most of you know that. We had about 150 people going out back into the gathering room. I love those candles. Back into the gathering room. We went all out through God's green earth, and we were hands and feet, God's hands and feet to the least of these in God's world. It was a wonderful experience. And then we had an executive committee meeting Monday night. And one of the members of the executive committee says, I had a great time, but I have a simple question. What's next? Now what? She's right, you know. How does God's work, our hands Sunday, translate into taking care of the least of these on Monday morning and Tuesday afternoon and Thursday evening? How can each of us, in our own simple way, give more and more of who we are to care for those people in God's world who have no rights or no privilege or no intrinsic value at all? Do you want to be great? Do you want to have your life mean something? Then go to where the least of these children of God live and work and scratch out of living, and be little Christs to them. Because, Jesus says, that's what it means to be a disciple. That's where the church is most clearly the church. And ladies and gentlemen, that's where God is. Living with the very children God came to save. Amen.